Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this webinar with this somewhat strange but still intriguing title, How to Protect Yourself from Toxic People. My name is Thomas Erikson, and I am broadcasting this from Sweden. I am the author of the book Surrounded by Psychopaths, which is about manipulation and what can happen if you actually are not aware, which I will tell you how to be. That is indeed my case today. Speaking about manipulation, the American presidential election is finally over, I guess. Even though we are not Americans, most of us who are listening here tonight, still we are affected, and things were happening over there, and I guess there will be some change in the White House. That is, as far as I can understand, the plan at least. But who knows with who the guy in the White House is. The president actually is. A lot has been said about Mr. Trump, and I do never comment on politics, but it is interesting, as I am a behavioral expert. He is sort of fascinating when it comes to how he's acting and how he's not acting, what he says and what he doesn't say, and all these things. It is interesting. And I will come back to this because I have this little notion about, maybe I can explain a couple of things to you and see if we can straighten some question marks out tonight. So, about the order, some important info. This is very important. I'm going to talk for about approximately 45 minutes, and then we will have a Q&A. You can ask me any questions you like. It says 10 to 25 minutes. That's because I can be here, well, as long as you like. As long as there are interesting questions, I will be here for you, at least till about 9 o'clock CET. The chat in this session can be used, but not for asking questions. If you place the questions in the chat, I will not see them. So please use the chat, the Q&A box, and there you can add any questions you like. And if you see some other person writing a question there that you find intriguing, you can vote, so it will sort of rise to the surface, and I will give you the best possible answer afterwards that I actually can. So please do not hesitate to do so. Now, okay, so psychopaths. What about psychopaths? What is a psychopath actually? What does he look like? Well, is this a psychopath? I guess so. Is this a psychopath? Well, sadly enough, these are also psychopaths. This one is, of course, is a made-up psychopath by the author Thomas Erikson, Silence of the Lambs. I guess you remember that movie. These two guys are unfortunately real people who did even worse things than Hannibal Lecter did. And this is little Mary Bell, who made her first killing at the age of 9. And here we have Countess Elizabeth Bathory that actually killed, and some people claim personally, 600 people, bathing in their blood. Now, are these psychopaths? I would suggest yes, they are. I haven't met any of them, but the evidence talks against them, I would like to say. And for this guy as well, Mr. Al Dunlap. I will come back to Mr. Al Dunlap in a moment. But, okay, so what is a psychopath? Really, is it the guy who sort of, I mean, if you're going to protect yourself from toxic people, then you need to understand what a psychopath actually is. Is it the guy who cut you off in your lane when you were going to work in your car? If you're still going to your offices? No, probably not. Even though we might yell psychopath after some people, usually they are not psychopaths because they do not look like we expect them to do. The problem is they look basically like you and I, which is sort of a problem, I would say. There are some things that you can actually use in order to learn how to recognize a psychopath. The problem is you can't see it in the first encounter or the second, or maybe even in the 10th. What you do need to do is to look for patterns. You need to look for lots of different kind of behaviors. And this is based on David Hare's famous psychopath checklist. He's a Canadian psychologist, probably the Nestor, I would say, when it comes to research by psychopathy. Has been really good at this since the mid-60s. So he has forgotten more about psychopaths than we will ever learn. And the thing is this, on this checklist, you will see different things that actually will go for plenty of people in here. I mean, many of us are charming. Many of us sort of, are impulsive. Some of us need stimulation. Some of you are promiscuous. I don't know you very well. The problem is this: you need to see the bigger picture. It's not easy to say, who is this? Who is the psychopath? But the one who is actually using enough of these traits, enough times, in a certain sort of extent, there you might see the psychopath. And that is not a very easy thing to do. I'm going to pick a couple of these things and take a deeper look into them. So if I just collect these things: charm, manipulation techniques, pathological liars. Well, the lying, of course, it's always the lying. Why not lie? Because it's so fun to lie, right? Well, if you have psychopathic traits within your personality, you might think that is actually a thing. And no empathy or remorse or regret. Well, to begin with, let's start with the charming thing. We talk about Prince Charming. I mean, this guy of course, he cannot be a psychopath. However, psychopaths usually look a bit like this. That is one of the problems. They are more looking like this than they are looking like Hannibal Lecter, which usually fools us pretty much. They confuse us really well by presenting themselves in a really fashionable and nice and well-dressed, well-combed way, and they really look like really good guys, and they are smiling and telling you funny jokes, even though you might see that they are not smiling themselves. I mean, they are certainly not laughing, because in order to laugh at a joke, you need to understand it, and in order to understand it, you need to see what's wrong with this picture, which is one clue actually to understanding what a psychopath actually is. Another trait that is actually very, very common: all psychopaths are very cunning manipulators. They really know how to trick all of us, and they are using different techniques. I'm going to show a couple of them to you in a short while. They are tricking us, they are confusing us, they are fooling us, because, well, why not? If you feel that you are doing things that you normally shouldn't do or wouldn't do or even couldn't do, but you are still doing them, maybe somebody actually is manipulating you. And here you need to pay attention, you need to be aware, but still, again, you have to look for the patterns. The key is to look for the patterns. Of course, why not lie? Psychopaths are known to produce lies that are so fantastic, so impossible, that you might think, when you read about it, you might say to yourself, that's impossible. Nobody will fall for those lies. But still they lie because people tend to believe what people say. Most of us are, I wouldn't call us naive, but at least we still trust the good in usually most people that we actually meet. You and I, individually, I can't see you, but I'm pretty sure that all of you are, let's say, honest, decent people who just want to make the right things, to do the right choices and everything. But we are sort of very easy to get at when it comes to lying, because we don't lie. At least not, well, I'm not talking about the white lies. I'm not talking about saying, oh, that jacket is really beautiful, you should actually keep it. We're not saying, I hope you kept the receipt. We will say things to make people comfortable. But psychopaths and manipulators, they lie just because it's possible to lie. They might say, I had a hamburger for lunch while they had salmon. Why? Well, why not? It's sort of a part of the game. They like to see how far can they go? How far can they take it? How much can they actually fool you? It makes them, it gives them energy. And of course, they don't regret anything what they do. No remorse, no regrets, because, hey, they are entitled to do anything they like. Every psychopath, and this you can actually write down if you like, all psychopaths are narcissists. Not all narcissists are psychopaths, but every psychopath has strong narcissistical traits within their personalities. And that is actually something that gives them well, they are entitled to do whatever they feel like, and they don't regret themselves, even if they step on some toes or actually make life miserable for somebody else. Hey, it's their right to do so. And this is something we also have to understand. They do not regret, they don't regret anything. They have no empathy. They understand that you are suffering, but they just don't care. It sounds dramatic when I say it like this. I understand this, and that is because it is dramatic. But again, look for the pattern. Here, I used to use pictures like wolves when I talked about psychopaths, because I consider them predators in let's say, in sheep's clothing, if you like, even though that's a cliche and it's a bit worn out, isn't it? And then I went on from wolves to hyenas, because they eat dead animals. Usually these days I don't use that. Now I use tapeworms as an example, because psychopaths are parasites. They are parasites. They will love to, if you took the bill at the restaurant. I mean, imagine we will go back to going to restaurants for lunch and evenings and so on, and that we will come back there. But again, pay attention. One of the guests around the lounge table will always have forgotten his wallet or his card. So could you just give me, 10 euros? I'll pay you back in the morning. They have no intention to do so. They will borrow money from somebody and they will test you. They will test you for 5 euros. If you say yes, they will test you for 15 euros. And then they will try to 50 and 100 and 500, 1 or 10,000 euros. They wouldn't start with 10,000 euros, because then you would probably say, hey, I don't know you. Who are you? But they would start with 5 euros and just see what happens. And they would sort of stretch the limits and see how far can they go with each and every individual. That is what a parasite do. They are feeding on you and on me and on everybody else. That is their normal behavior. Comes really, really, let's say, naturally for them. See, I'm flipping my papers here. Now, one question that I often get is, and I see some of you have written it already, how do you become a psychopath? That's a really good question. Well, we don't know for sure. The science isn't really 100% settled. What we do know, it is probably in the, let's say, the moment of, let's say, creation, if you know what I mean. That's when a psychopath is actually created. The thing is this, neuroscience has taught us a lot when it comes to understanding how they are wired, how they are sort of functioning in the world, and what they are looking like. And this is one brain as an example, and this is another brain. Forget about the colors. The colors aren't necessary, but we can see there are differences in the patterns. This is done by what we call MRIs, brain scans, basically, brain scans. It's a simplification. I know this. Don't ask me questions about that, but still. And this brain is what we would like to call normal. And this brain is actually a psychopathic brain. So what is the difference? As you can see, the yellow areas are actually missing on the, now let's see, on the, what is it? Is it on the right side on your screen, right? I'm going to simplify this as well. It has something to do with the amygdala. The amygdala is the, let's call it the emotional center of the human brain. This is what regulates how you feel and how you react to emotional things. It regulates fear and happiness and joy and when you are afraid of things and if you are angry and so on and so forth. The psychopaths have a really underdeveloped amygdala. And we can actually see this by now. That means that you can never cure a psychopath. You can never treat him. You can't do anything to make him better or her. I say him all the time because usually the psychopath is actually a man. 3 out of 4 psychopaths are male. 1 out of 4 is a woman. Why that is, we don't know yet, but the research is sort of ongoing. But when you can't feel things, when you don't have sort of the tools between your ears to sense what happens within another person, then you might do anything because you don't recognize the problem. You don't see it as a problem, at least not for you. You can see somebody crying, but you will never understand fully why he is crying. You can learn how to recognize certain emotions, how certain feelings actually look on the outside, but you will never feel them yourself. So that's why they are sort of immune to human emotions. Even though I will be hurt by a psychopath, he don't care because he feels absolutely nothing. And this is one of the explanations. One thing that you actually can see, if you meet somebody that makes you feel, let's say, we have all met these people, some people who actually make us feel, let's say, a little bit uncomfortable. Sometimes you know what it is, sometimes we don't. One thing that you can look for, if you like, that is how they are looking at you. Psychopaths has a certain way of looking at people. It depends on where you score, how high up you score on the list. But as they do not know the social rules, they don't know, they don't naturally understand what's good and what's bad, and what's okay, and how to interact or not, because they have to learn every single move. When we are sort of domesticized by family, they are wandering around, you know, doing other things. They don't understand the same thing that we do. They don't feel, again, they don't feel the same thing as we do. Usually in a conversation, I mean, they will never look down or look back. Usually in a conversation with another person, you will, you know, look to the side, you will look, you know, downwards, and then you will look a little bit upwards and so on, because you will never remain eye contact every second of a, let's say, 1 hour long conversation, unless you're a psychopath, because they don't know it's rude to stare into people's eyes. They don't understand that it's actually a problem. They have to learn it, and some of them hasn't learned it. This could be one of the traits you could be looking for. You can see it in how they are actually viewing things. Okay, it's called the long gaze. They can look at you for 5 minutes, you know, just like this, and it feels really, really strange. People who has encounter this experience, they would say, he made me feel so uncomfortable, but I could not put my finger on it. Why was that happening? I don't know. But now I know. When I learn this sort of what I should look for, then I understand. And this is what we, as I would like to call us, you know, normal people actually have to look out for. Yes, quick reminder, you may ask any questions you like about this, manipulation, psychopathy, or behaviors in the Q&A box. Please do not hesitate to do so. Okay, so, and yes, speaking of normal people, sorry. To understand why psychopath is actually sort of a threat to the rest of us, so we need to understand who we are. One of the main keys in order to protect yourself from these toxic people is to understand yourself. I use something called the DISC model. You might have heard of it. It's a 4-way. I'm going to show it to you. And I base it on 4 colors: red, yellow, green, and blue. That's just for pedagogical reasons. It's easier to remember when you see it like this. And of course, all of us have some sort of color, right? And I will I'll walk you through this for a couple of minutes just to show you why this is important to understand yourself. Oh, that's the wrong order. There it is, yes. We have to keep things in order, right? Now, we have this sort of 4-way, 2x2 matrix. Some people are task-oriented. They are more interested in the task or the topic, not saying they don't care about people, but they are more interested in the task itself, especially at work. Some people are relation-oriented or people-oriented, not saying they don't care about the task, but they are more interested in the people they will be working with, as an example. Some people are extrovert, some people are introvert. And this makes us sort of an easy to understand model that doesn't cover everything, but it covers behaviors. It's not the same thing as saying this is your personality, but it says something about your behavioral style, if you know what I mean. D stands for dominance, I for influence, S for stability, and C for compliance. How much are you willing to comply and sort of adjust yourself to the world? If some of you like to take notes during these kind of webinars, please do. Now is the perfect moment to take notes, but you have to write really fast, you know, because that's just the way it is. No, that's a stupid picture. I shouldn't show you that one. Now, a couple of examples, just to look at each and every color, just very briefly. The red people, they are very decisive and demanding and goal-oriented and result-oriented, very, very competitive. They like to compete and they like to win, you know, and life is so, let's speed things up, you know, bam, 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 like this. Let's speed things up, you know, because life is sort of, hey, who has the time to just sit there and fiddle around, you know, speed up things, you know. We need to, you know, be on our way now, you know, and people are talking too much. Shut up and do your job. It's a technical term, by the way. Sorry about that. Now, and we will recognize these people as well. We will sort of get a hang of them pretty easily because they are easy to sort of recognize. Yes. The other ones are also the extroverts, but still they are different because they are also relation-oriented instead of task-oriented. So they are optimistic and always smiling and very social, you know, and creative and enthusiastic. And yes, you know, everything is so fun, you know, and inspiring, and I love life, you know, and the sun is shining all the time. And even though you might say, hey, you know, it's pretty cloudy today, you know, it is not shining, but the sun is always shining somewhere, right? And you can't be angry with them because they are so nice and pleasant to be around all the time. You know, they are so you know, sympathetic, you know, and everything, and you like them, and that's a bad thing because they can really mess things up, you know. Creative, some of them haven't touched ground since the late 90s, I would say. They just open their mouth and out comes whatever. I usually call it unprocessed material. Okay, so how about the green factor? Let's take a look at the green factor now, shall we? Okay, green people are on the introvert side. That means they are more to themselves, you know, a little bit more like this, not striving for being visual and being in center of things, very caring, very sharing, friendly team players. Oh, these are the absolute best team players. Everything is for the team. The individual doesn't matter at all. They're really good listeners. These people actually, they hear what you say. And you know what? They will remember what you said, especially if it was something bad or negative, especially if it was something negative about the green person. This will be filed on shelf 1A for eternity. One thing they loathe is conflict. They are conflict avert en masse. They hate conflicts. They don't like them because only rude people and troublemakers are sort of starting conflicts. So let's swipe everything under the rug and pretend it never happened. Of course, at the end of the road, somebody will look under the rug and say, hey, what's this? And then bigger conflict, but who am I to judge? Then we have the blue behavior. The analyst, the accountant, the engineer, the sort of tax sheriff, you know, maybe some neurosurgeon, cautious, meticulous, extremely precise, detail-oriented, questioning all the time. How do you know this? How do you know that? You know, very thoughtful questioning. And, you know, details are important. Let's dig a little bit deeper down to the groundwater to find and see if we can find details. You know, how about details? Did I mention details? Details. The devil is in the details, you know, and he's right. Whoever founded that one, oh, the blue guy will know who actually came up with that quote. He will know where you first read that sentence. The devil is in the details. I don't know. But the blue guy or girl, for that matter, this is not related to gender, they will know because that's how they are acting, because they will find out. Never challenge a blue person when it comes to facts and details and, you know, science and analysis of things, because they will just bury you under detailed proof. That's how they are doing this. And they will win because they will never give up, because they are meticulous, as I mentioned. Now, okay, these are the basics. These are the fundamentals when it comes to these individuals. And of course, as probably most of you have already figured out, Usually people are not one color. There are about 5% of the population in the industrialized world. We have a lot of data here, actually. They are showing basically only one color, but the rest of us are a combination of mostly two colors. 80%, roughly speaking, I would say, are showing two colors. And the rest, 15%, obviously three colors. So as soon as you add another layer of another color on top of things, it might not be as, let's say, obvious to you what color a person has or how he would actually end up in the disc matrix. But that's just practice. As soon as you start looking into these things, you will understand more about it. Yes, so here, yeah, that's the something. And of course, there's also downside to things. Every coin has two sides, as I'm talking about the cliches just now. And of course, some people don't think that the dominant competitive type is really pleasant to be around. And some people think that the yellows talk too much, too many words. That could be the case. And the green ones might be stubborn and passive and dishonest because they will say no. They will say yes, but they will mean no, because conflict avert again, they will not say what they actually believe is true. They will say what they think you would like to hear. That's another thing. And some people think actually that the blue people are indecisive and suspicious and cold-hearted, to be honest, and actually more like robots than human beings. So, paraphrasing a good friend of mine. Now, an example on how you can see these things, it's the same thing as I mentioned before. You can look for patterns. You can look for, let's say, emails. I mean, what else is there to say? Tomorrow, 3 o'clock, be there. What else is there to say? Well, you can say a lot of things, actually, to be honest. You can just let your, let's say, your tongue do the job, or your fingers in this case, in this email, you know. The problem with this yellow email, you have to go through it all, because somewhere in all of these words, you will find some important detail that will tell you where the meaning is and when it is, and so on and so on. So, you know, you have to go through it all. The information is actually there. Yeah, or there. It could be, that could be the case as well. Yes, that is true. Anyways, and the green email looks a bit different, and it's nice and pleasant, very relation oriented as well. And you don't have to talk about buns if you don't like to, or cookies. And the blue email as well could be very long, many words, just as the the yellow email. But the thing is the blue and the yellow email are very, very different from each other. If you take a close look, you will see they don't look the same at all. And most of all, the attachments are there. I mean, how hard can this be? Attach, click, and off it goes. You know, it's simple as that. This is not neuroscience, to be honest. So, okay. Now, what has this to do with anything? We are talking about manipulation, right? Well, the thing is this, manipulators, they need to understand who you are, because not all people will be manipulated in the same way all the time. It depends on what the psychopath does, or the person with psychopathic traits. He will actually look for your weakest spots, and there he will sort of force the knife in and twist it around a bit. That you need to be aware of. The more you understand about yourself, the more you will understand what your weak spots actually are. What are your weaknesses in your, let's say, behavior, or maybe even in your personality? I know it's a harsh thing to say, and I do apologize if it sounds too hard on a Tuesday evening. But the thing is this, we all have our weaknesses. We all have our soft spots, so to speak. And if you don't know which they are, you are open to manipulation and to be used by these parasitic people, because they are out there. We are not surrounded by psychopaths. I understand this, but depending on what psychologists you ask, they might make up to about, let's say, between 2 or 4% of the population. Let's just go low and say it's 2% of the population. We are 7 billion people on this planet as we speak, 7 point something. Now you do the math. How many psychopaths are there? 140 million. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. And they will look for weak spots within the ones they have that have something that they would like to have, actually. Because can they take it from you? They will try. The red person are afraid of losing control. That's the weakest spot. When the red person loses control, he or she will feel really bad and really sad and will do anything in order to gain control again. That is really important to understand. They can be really aggressive by doing so, but the psychopath, he has his way around these things. He will actually trick this person anyway, even though there might be some aggression shown. Whoops, sorry about that. There it is. The yellow person, social exclusion. That's really bad because they are extremely social. They have friends all over the place. They love to chat. They love to talk about people, about, whatever. Doesn't matter. Listen to me telling you about my fantastic life, And if they can't do that during lockdown now and during this COVID-19 situation, which is a horrible situation for all of us, I understand this. I have great respect for this. Yellow people are suffering more because they hate it, because they cannot socialize the way they used to and the way they need to in order to feel good about themselves, to be honest. As I mentioned, green people, they don't like conflicts, and the blue ones, they hate being made looking like fools. Means being, let's say, caught with the wrong details. Maybe they misunderstood some of the facts or made the wrong conclusions. That's really, really bad. And if they look especially to their peers, if somebody makes them look like a fool in let's say in a university, they will actually hate you and they will be really open to manipulation in order to get out of that situation. That is just the way it is. So how does a psychopath or a person with psychopathic traits actually manipulate? Well, there are some specific techniques. I will show you a couple of them, just a couple of them. One thing that is called love bombing. People usually don't understand what that is. But if you have been, let's say, the victim of love bombing, you will know what it is. Because love bombing is actually something really, really weird. Somebody sitting next to you saying, oh, you are great, you are perfect, you are fantastic, you're absolutely awesome. I love everything you do and everything you say. If you haven't been, let's say, on the receiving end of this, you will never understand how good it feels, how magic it makes you feel, how wonderful you look at yourself. Because here is somebody who actually sees me, maybe for the first time in my life. Somebody sees me for who I am, and he loves me, or she loves me, or at least he says so. And that's good enough for me. Nobody has ever loved me before, because the manipulators know who to look for, remember, right? Love bombing is a dangerous, dangerous thing. And you need good friends around you to keep your head sort of clear, if you know what I mean. Another interesting technique is what I call arbitrary positive praise, usually used at the working place. Arbitrary meaning you don't know when it's going to happen. Sometimes you do something good, you hear nothing. Sometimes you do something, another time you do something good, you hear a lot, and maybe your boss is a psychopath. Could be the case. I don't rule it out, to be honest. And he or she will use this whenever they feel like, in order to make you do what they want you to do, regardless if it's good or bad or whatever. As long as you hear good and positive feedback, you will sort of step up and do the job, right? But they can also twist it around and use what I call arbitrary negative feedback, which might be even worse. Negative critique. I mean, who loves critique? I hate it. We all, well, not hate it, but we don't like it. It's better to, be sugar-coated and hear that I am a great person instead of hearing I only do bad things, right? So, but the problem is, if you don't know when it comes, you can't say for sure. It makes you insecure. And really smart and clever psychopaths, they will use both techniques at the same time. And then what happens? You step into your office Monday morning, let's say, and your manager, your boss tells you, well, whatever, is it good, is it bad, who knows? And regardless of what you do, you might get praise or you might get critique. And it can be really a harsh critique, and it can be a sort of love bombing like praise or positive feedback. What we need to understand, there is absolutely no connection to performance. What you actually achieved at work Doesn't matter. That is not the point. The point is they will use these techniques whenever they feel like, in order to make you do something, whatever that might be. And here you need to actually pay really close attention to how your manager, for instance, do things. If he or she makes you feel bad, something is wrong here, and you need to understand it. I am not calling managers or bosses or leaders psychopaths. That is not what I'm doing. But statistically, there are a bit more psychopaths the higher up in the hierarchy you get than it is, let's say, at the lower levels. That we actually do know from data. The final technique I would like to just show you very briefly before we sort of look into what we could do about this, that is what we call gaslighting. Gaslighting is a technique that has actually come from a movie where the Swedish actor Ingrid Bergman was this wife of a man who turned up the gas lights and then turned them down and turned them up and down all the time. And she asked him, who is turning them up and down all the time? And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. That's where the actual word gaslighting comes from. Gaslighting is really hard to understand, and here you are it's crucial that you can actually look for the patterns. It's absolutely crucial that you do so, because gaslighting is tricky and difficult. The psychopath might, let's say, do something and immediately say, I didn't do that. Or say something and you say, what? Why did you say that? I didn't say that. And you know what you saw and you know what he or she said, but still they are told that I have no idea what you're talking about. Instead, they will make you feel like you're crazy. You're a drama queen. Why are you so defensive? You're stupid. You're bipolar. You don't trust me. You don't like me. You know, and they start to fake cry, fake tears, and all these things. You need help. You all talk about yourself, and everything will just be smacked up, and you will never know what hit you actually, because these things are extremely, extremely complicated, actually. One woman I know, her husband is, I would say, a full-blown psychopath. Every time he emptied the bank account they had together, he emptied it, used it on, well, who knows, actually. And she confronted him. He started to yelling in front of the children, you don't care about the children. It took her years to understand what he did, because he sort of confused her completely. So she started defending herself instead of talking about where the money went. That's an example of gaslighting. Okay. And well, of course, yes, smoke screens. They will start talking about something completely different. You told, I'm going to go out with, you know, I don't know, with let's say, I'm going to go out with Anne tonight. I'm going to go out with Anne. And they come home 2 o'clock in the morning. I called Anne, you say, you weren't there. I said Anna. I never said Anne. I said, Anna, you're not listening, you know. Only smoke screens all the time. Again, you need to look for the patterns, because a lot of people are using 1 or 2 of these techniques, sometimes subconsciously. They don't know that they actually are doing it. But if you pay attention, you can see the pattern and you will recognize it for what it actually is. And we all need to understand, we can all be manipulated. Nobody goes completely free. We can all be manipulated. That is just the way it is. It's only a matter of how and when and how long it's going to take until we are sort of in the box, if we are unlucky to stumble upon a psychopath. I know it sounds dramatic, and it is dramatic. If you encounter one, you need to know what to do. One question I often get is actually, how far up the ladder can an intelligent psychopath take himself? Pretty far, to be honest. I mean, unintelligent psychopaths, they actually, if they see, let's say, they see a watch on an arm, on a wrist, you know, a wristwatch on the street, they will sort of, I want that watch. He will smack the guy on the head and just take the watch. The smart ones, they don't do that. No, because that will put them, you know, in a bad place. But a smart psychopath, he will do another thing. He will see the watch and then he will talk you into handing it over. He will make you give it to him. That is the difference. An intelligent psychopath can make you do things that you couldn't imagine doing. Instead of smacking you on the hand, he will just tell you, give me the watch. Not saying, give me the watch. He will make you, I would like to say, he would he would make it look like a really good idea to hand over the watch to him. you're gonna get it back, but off he goes. So how far can they go, the smart ones? Well, I would say pretty far. Pretty far, I would say. Like this guy. Remember Mr. Al Dunlap here? I showed him to you half an hour ago. Al here. He wrote this book called Mean Business. This is what I love with the English language. You can use it in so many ways that I can't do in Swedish, to be honest, I have to say. Mean business, what does that actually mean? Well, it means he did anything to succeed. He was the CEO on Fortune 500 companies in the US, and he did literally anything. He fired anybody personally because he enjoyed it. He wrote this book, and he was actually reviewed in, as you can see here, the Wall Street Journal. This is really good, and he understands business and so on and so forth. However, he has another face as well. He also has the predator's face, this Al Dunlap here, Some people actually called him Chainsaw Dunlap because he killed companies in order to succeed. He killed, figuratively speaking, I guess you understand that. He killed the companies, and some guy wrote another book about him and said, oh boy, this is not really good at all, Chainsaw Dunlap. That's a long story. How can I point him out as a psychopath? Well, he actually acknowledged himself as a psychopath. He said, I have all these traits, but I don't call it psychopathy. I call it leadership. I rest my case. But are they only evil? Isn't there any good things about psychopaths? Well, it depends on your angle, I would say. I mean, they are pragmatic. They show some courage in tough decisions. They are risk takers, which sometimes is good. They are really emotionally stable, hence the amygdala thing, They don't get distressed like you and I do. They don't procrastinate. They get these thoughts in their head and off they go, and actually the lack of empathy helps them, like it helped this guy. And I don't mean Mr. Sean Connery, who is one of my heroes. I mean James Bond. We don't consider him a psychopath now, do we? That's because he's on our side. But he's a liar, he's a con man, he's a trickster, he's a womanizer, he's a serial killer. He's been killing people for, 50 years now or something? Sorry about that joke. But the thing is this, you can't do these things without having some emotional disturbance between your ears. And that is another thing. That's why they can cover, between things that might look like a good thing, but maybe not be a good thing for people around them. So the question remains, how far up the ladder can they actually go? Well, wrapping things up now. How far can they go? Let's consult this gentleman here, Kevin Dutton. Kevin Dutton is a British psychologist and an author. He has done serious and really splendid and extremely interesting research on psychopathy. He used something that's called the PPIR. It's a psychopathy trait checklist which is based on something called fearless dominance and self-centered impulsivity. And they each consider sort of sub-categories. And when it comes to fearless dominance, you can see Machiavellian egocentricity. That is not a good thing. These people you don't want to meet, trust me on this one. And he listed world leaders throughout the history based on whatever knowledge we do have. And one of the bigger psychopathic leaders is this man here. And I don't think that you are surprised. And if I show you this gentleman here, you will not be surprised as well, or Idi Amin, or for that matter, Henry VIII. If we take it sort of into our time where we are living right now, let's say the modern world, the modern times, then you go back to, let's say, just as an example, American presidents. Now, we live in Europe, but they affect us. We followed the election. I'm pretty sure you did as well. So we need to pay attention what happens. And when the president has different things on his agenda than we might want him to have, we would like him to have, we need to pay attention. And Kevin Dutton made the research really, and he has published it as well. So I am only quoting him. He said, the president that's described like this, as you see here on the screen, that is actually this gentleman. This has been said about John F. Kennedy, one of the charmingest men on the planet. Now, how is this possible? Well, I told you about the charm factor. If you add it on top of things and you add manipulation and everything, well, that is just what happens. Number 2 on the list, according to Mr. Kevin Dutton, it's just this gentleman here. I never, well, and so on and so forth. So what about the gentleman, let's say, at the moment occupying the White House? Did he end up on the list? Well, he actually did, but so did his protagonist during the previous election. The other maybe, well, she never became president, Mrs. Clinton here. Now, I am not saying anything. I only sort of point out what Kevin Dutton said. If you would like to dig into this, you can do so, as you can see at the bottom of this picture here. Now, maybe I should add that Mr. President Joe Biden has not been assessed by Kevin Dutton. So about this, we have no idea. So, wrapping things up before we start the Q&A session. How do you protect yourself? I would love to give you 3 major advice. Here it goes. Write this down. Learn how to recognize psychopathic traits. Learn to see the patterns. Learn to see what they do when they do things that make you feel uncomfortable, because that's one main rule. If it feels bad, it is bad. That could be in your relationship with your spouse, with your brother or your mother, or with your manager, or with somebody in your staff, if you are the manager indeed. If it feels bad, it is bad. And you need to listen to these things. Look at psychopathic traits, look at the checklists. You can read the books about it if you like, that's absolutely possible. Number 2, increase your own self-awareness. Understand who you are and understand what the psychopath sees, especially your weak spots. If you don't know which they are and he does, it's like going into the ring, you know, against Mike Tyson with your arms on your back like this. He will actually sort of beat you really very severely, I would say. You need to be armed with at least knowledge of who you are. So please do that. And the third one is actually, how much self-respect are you worth? Because psychopaths will take the self-respect from you. They will push you down into the mud. They will take your self-awareness. They will take your self-esteem, your self-confidence. And at the end of the road, they will take your self-respect, and then you are done. Again, it sounds dramatic. I understand. That is only because it is dramatic. If you encounter a psychopath, the only thing you actually can do, and I put my name on this advice, leave. Just go. It's easier said than done. But this is a game you will never, ever win. It's just impossible because you are too human, if you know what I mean. Always remember 3 types of people. Those who helped you in difficult times, those who left you in difficult times, and those who put you in difficult times. Thank you for listening. Now I will stop sharing my screen and show myself in a bigger picture. Now we'll take a look in the Q&A box. We have plenty of questions here. So I will just read them to you and I will actually, well, I'll just go from top bottom here. Okay, so here's an interesting question. What happens when 2 psychopaths meet at first sight and sort of recognize each other? That's a really interesting question. The thing is this, what happens when, let's say, 2 hyenas meet? They will understand, oh, you're a predator too. So they will probably not attack each other, but they can cooperate. One example is Adolf Hitler during the Second World War. Thank you, Joanna. He was not the only psychopath in the management. He had plenty of them around him, and that actually made things just worse. Another question, is there a profession that is known to attract more psychopaths? Yes, unfortunately there is. Managing positions is one of them. Media is another one. There's lots of people in the media because psychopaths are actually very, very keen on let's say, to be admired and to be seen as extremely important and fantastic people. That's the narcissism within every psychopath. They will love all the lights on them. So you will find them in media, you will find them in managing positions as a CEO, regardless if it's a legal or an illegal, let's say, organization you're running. You will find a certain amount of both journalists and also actually lawyers with psychopathic traits. That we have statistics, so I'm not making this up, that's actually based on data. Now, another question, I'd love to hear the difference between narcissistic and psychopathic behaviors. Well, it's a difference. Well, as I mentioned before, narcissism is a part of psychopathic traits. Behaviors. Narcissism is being put in the center of things, feeling entitled, making yourself bigger and more fantastic than you are, thinking that you know everything even though you know nothing, thinking that you are more successful, more beautiful, more popular than other people, not having to study for an exam, not having to let's say, follow the rules because you are by nature amazing. Those are all narcissistic traits. All psychopaths has these traits. On top of those things, they also have these manipulation things, and that they can actually be lethal to us. If they are using physical violence, they can be extremely dangerous. The psychopathy is only sort of a couple of steps up the ladder of let's say, pure malevolence or evil, if you like. Psychopaths, are they aware of their conditions? Short answer, no. They don't consider them. Psychopathy is, of course, a bit stigmatized. If you call somebody a psychopath, he will not be happy, obviously. He won't. The thing is this, they will not recognize it. As with Mr. Al Dunlap, he was confronted by the British author and journalist John Ronson, who asked, are you a psychopath? And he actually said, yes, I am. But I don't consider psychopathy. That's one of the clues here. They see it only as good things. And as they are on top of the world, how can this ever be a problem? I'm feeling fine, you know? Sorry about you guys. Well, they don't feel sorry at all, to be honest. Okay. Most of my exes seem to have been on the psychopathic spectrum. What can I do to protect myself better? Well, as I mentioned before, and I will repeat it very briefly, if it feels bad, it is bad. Walk away. Do nothing. Block them, emails, social media, phone numbers, everything. Block. You can never have a decent conversation with any of them. If you feel confused, it's bad. Leave. Go. Walk away. Am I a psychopath if I took notes of each... Where did that one go? I took notes, individual weakness, in order to gain social skills. No, as you write it to me, that you're not a psychopath. Are you born a psychopath or do you become one? You're probably born a psychopath. A common question is, what's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath? Because they behave very similarly to each other. A psychopath is born, as I mentioned, it's something wrong with the amygdala. They are lacking the ability to understand and to feel emotions. A sociopath is created by really hard surroundings. Really, let's say they were raised in a really bad neighborhood. Their parents were drug addicts or something. They were really struggling on the streets when they were really small and seeing really bad things. That can actually sort of take down the humanity within a small child. That can create a sociopath. But psychopaths are born. Are intelligent women most likely to be affected by psychopaths? That's an interesting question. Are intelligent women most likely to be affected by psychopaths? I don't know. Here I have to guess. I don't have any data that confirms this or denies it. The problem with intelligent people is that they think too much. Intelligent people think, I heard him say these things, I saw him do that. It can't be that obvious that he's actually either an idiot or a psychopath or whatever. Usually when they see things are done in a really strange way, they think there has to be a logical reason behind this. And that's a problem because they don't listen to their emotions. let's say, enough. They are trying to use logic to sort of explain things. If intelligent people or intelligent women, for that matter, are more affected, I don't know. I can only speculate, but I actually cannot say. Okay, so many questions. Let's see. Is this mental disease hereditary? Well, I have to correct you, anonymous attendee. I do apologize when I correct you. It is not a mental disease. It's a personality disorder. A mental disease is like, let's say, if you're paranoid, or if you have schizophrenia, or something else, if you're whatever, bipolar, or whatever it could be. Psychopathy, like narcissism, is a personality disorder, meaning you cannot be treated, you cannot be cured, because it's in you. You will always be like that. Is it a hereditary? Can you inherit it from your parents? Yes, about 50% could be blamed on, let's say, on your DNA, on your genetics. It's a higher risk for being born a psychopath if your parents 1 or 2. That would be terrible, are psychopaths. So yes, it's hard to imagine a child as a psychopath, but still, adult psychopaths were kids at some time, and it is what it is. Okay, so how do you self-categorize as, if you would like to disclose? I don't know if you talk about the colors, or if I might be a psychopath. I hope not. Well, when it comes to the colors, I am very much, let's see, very much red and blue, and some yellow, no green at all. I hope that's answered the question. So, oh dear, any hope psychopath may heal, any medication and therapy, or no hope? No hope. The short answer is no hope at all. You cannot treat it. It's impossible. In Sweden, in the 60s, early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, they put psychopaths in therapy. It only made the situation worse, even worse, because then they learned so much. They got so much information on how to misbehave and how to manipulate people even more, which is actually, it's a horrible insight, but still it is so true. You can't treat them. They cannot get better. No. When you can't leave or be away, what do you say? Say at the workplace. Okay, that's an interesting question. If you can't leave, if you can't quit your job, I mean, we are living in really, this is tough times. We are living in tough times. Many of us during the Corona crisis, we are suffering. And I understand this. It's tough for many people, and it's going to be, we will talk about this for decades. We are living in historical times, if you like. The thing is this, if you can't leave your job, you need to sort of isolate yourself from the psychopath as much as you can. You can never win this game. You can never discuss. You can't argue, because you will try to use logic. And you can't use logic against a psychopath, because he will sort of twist it around to make you feel completely confused and make you feel crazy, actually, because that's what they do. I have met some really, really decent people, intelligent, really well put together up here, and they are completely confused because they can't wrap their head around what's happening, because it's too strange and too weird. And a lot of them are suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's sad to see. It's sad to see. What happens when a psychopath discovers that you have noticed his or her manipulation? Well, at the beginning of my career, I have encountered 5 or 6 psychopaths myself, and I have helped organizations in Sweden sort of get themselves on their feet again after being sort of manipulated by psychopaths. I said, call them out and make them leave. I usually don't recommend this without considering, because calling a psychopath out saying, hey, I know what you're doing, you are the psychopath, I will actually file complaints against you or charges or whatever. He or she might have, you know, put yourself in trouble by saying that you are the manipulator, because these people are really cunning. They do this for a living. They have been manipulating people for decades. You can't stand a chance if you try to sort of compete with them. When you go to your manager saying, hey, you know, Mike over here, I think he's a psychopath. Yeah, that's what he said about you. You can't win this game. I'm sorry. It's just impossible. We should have done what the Inuits did 1,000 years ago on Greenland. When they discovered psychopaths in the village, they put them on an ice flake and just a piece of ice and just send them out to sea and said, bye-bye, we can't have you here. That's what they did. That's not a recommendation, but I just... So what technique used to fight them if you have to handle with them? As I mentioned before, I wouldn't recommend it. For your own mental sanity, don't. And here we have a question. What can parents to-be do to prevent more psychopaths in the world? Well, I'm gonna finish with this question because it is important. I'm going to put a couple of minutes to this question. What can parents to-be do to prevent more psychopaths in the world? Well, one psychopath is born every 47th second. Yes, that is actually, it is as bad as that. What can you do? Well, what we do know is there are some research claims that if you treat a psychopathic child with very much compassion, very much love, not saying they are fantastic and great and superb and amazing by nature because they think so already, because that's a narcissistic trait within them. But if you treat them with compassion and love and you really sort of pay attention to them and be with them and act with them and show them they are important to you for real, then you might sort of tone down the psychopathic traits a little bit. But the problem with this advice is that it goes for all kids, right? I mean, what kid does not deserve those kinds of parents? All children should be sort of raised by people who love them and cares for them, right? So the question is, could we lower the number of psychopaths in the society if every parent really paid attention to the kids and not rewarded them for narcissistic behaviors, like saying, I am the best, I am the princess, I am the king, I am the next, let's say, social media influencer star, you know, I'm going to make billions. If you don't sort of emphasize those things that you're just like us, but we love you because you are, you know, you. That would be the absolute best thing you actually could do. 2 participants raised hand. Maybe if I would understand what actually means. There are so many questions, and I can employ many of them looks like the same. How common is it to encounter a psychopath? Well, between 2 and 4% of the population. The higher up in the hierarchy, the more you will meet. It's impossible to actually see any pattern in there. Okay, we have something here. I have been with a psychopath for many years. It's in denial, and I think I am in an addictive relationship as one part of him is so sweet and always know how to get me back. I feel hopeless, as I hope and I dream with medication will be better. Well, I'm going to finish here. Whoever you are who wrote those sentences, I feel with you. I feel with you. I really do. I can sense your frustration. Please, you have to invest in yourself because he is not good for you. If what you wrote here is true, you have to do something about it. You just have to. Please do something. Walk away if possible. Please walk away. That would be it. Thank you so much, Small World. Thank you, everybody, for everything. If you would like to read books about psychopathy, you may find them online or wherever. It's been a pleasure talking to all of you, and have a nice Tuesday evening, and take care and look out for the psychopaths.